All right. What is good, Suave City? It's your boy Chalito Suave here with another video. Welcome to the channel for all things rock and R&B. Today's going to be a little bit different because I wanted to address kind of the conversation that everybody's having. Thing about Pro Tools. Is it the industry standard still? Should you use it? Should you learn how to use it? Is it worth your time? And like what the whole ordeal is. And I wanted to give a different perspective that nobody's talking about that I think is very important to say. Now, to the original guy who made a video about it, I can't remember his name. He's an older guy. But then Bolo made a video responding to that, and that one went major viral, and that's where this whole conversation is even happening. So I just wanted to give my 2 cents about it because I've watched the other videos, and there's things that nobody else is saying that I think is important to say. So, from a person who's a musician, producer, engineer, songwriter, blah blah. Um, I have a different perspective than a lot of these people. So let's get into it. First, let me serenade you real quick. So as you see, we're in Pro Tools right now, and this is the subject of today's conversation: Pro Tools. Should you have it? Should you not? Is it a waste of your time? Let me just double check to make sure I'm not clipping you guys here real quick. Not really. You're fine. So let's talk about it. What's the real conversation about Pro Tools? What's the actual issue? I would say number one is that we always talk about Pro Tools in a specific way. When people complain about it, it's usually from a production standpoint, which is funny to me because in my looking at it, I think the only people who should complain are the engineers, not the producers. And this is gonna hurt some of you, but basically Bolo's complaint is that Pro Tools ain't ghetto tools. Um, because he wants to be able to right click it and it create a C major scale rather than learn how to play a C major scale. People complain about Pro Tools and its production and its ability to like record in and the MIDI stuff are the same people who tell you they love music so much. They love music so much that they will make every excuse in the book not to learn how to play an instrument. They'll make every excuse in the book not to go sign up for lessons. They'd rather spend $300 on some new kicks than $300 lessons to learn how to play the keys, learn how to play the guitar, learn how to play the bass. These people will tell you they love music, but they'll make every excuse in the world to not learn how to play music. And so I think that's something that we should very much look into. The fact that the people that are complaining about this typically are those people, the ones that don't want to learn how to play an instrument, the ones that don't want to take the time and invest in themselves and the career they still want. Um, it's typically those people that are complaining about Pro Tools. 1 second. Okay. So, um, and I think that's very important that we think about that. Like the people who have a problem with it is usually about the MIDI, right? But if you know how to play, you're not going to be using the MIDI that much anyways because you're going to recording in anyways. And if you're recording with your keys because you're a keyboard player, you hardly have to touch up at all because you're a musician. You know how to play. And so I find that most of the time, from a production standpoint, if you are complaining about this DAW, it's because you're lazy and you don't want to care. You don't want to get good. And this is coming from someone like you can ask anybody who went to SA Institute with me, dude. I used to rip them apart. I used to rip them apart for the same thing. I would tell them, "It's like, yo, you're making excuses. Learn how to play an instrument." I'm happy to say that when I left SAE Institute, there were 5 of the guys that really wanted to do music seriously. they all started picking up an instrument. 3 of them learned guitar, 2 of them are learning piano because they saw what I could do that they couldn't even touch because they're used to using samples and just chopping things up. But then I would come into the room and they'd be like blown away, like, dude, what the hell? Like anything I would come on is gonna sound 1,000 times better than anything they did because I'm actively playing. I put in years into the guitar, and you're like, well, now I'm old. Well, that's an excuse, man. You can improve your work if you really care. I'm sorry. If you've been playing for doing music for 15 years and you still have not committed to learning an instrument yet, then you need to change careers. You need to do something else because you don't actually love music. Because if you did, you'd learn how to speak it through an instrument. Si te hablo español no quiere decir que puedes hablar español. Just because you hear it doesn't mean you understand it. And so if I play guitar for you, doesn't mean you understand guitar. And so if I play keys for you, doesn't mean you understand keys. You got to learn how to play it. And so a lot of you guys want to do music for a living, and you don't even know what music is yet. You don't know what music is yet. You've heard things, and you try to replicate it, but you don't know what music is yet. And so typically what I find is the people that complain about Pro Tools is from a production standpoint, and they call themselves producers, but they don't even know how to play a A minor scale on any instrument. They can't do this, right? They don't know what the number system is. And how we utilize that from a writing perspective, from a theory perspective, and how that can help you record and make music a lot faster and easier, and how it can just inspire you and make things simpler, like how much it elevates your production and the amount of time you need to take to actually make something good. Um, these people aren't going to learn that, right? Because they want ghetto tools. They want right click and it do the job for me. I don't want to learn. I don't want to get better. And so I kind of do love Pro Tools for that reason, because in order to use it, you have to be good. You can't be someone who doesn't care. You can't be someone that doesn't practice. You can't be someone that doesn't try to improve. So I kind of like Pro Tools for that reason, that it forces me to get better. I have this Arturia keyboard. My first instrument was piano, but I haven't played it in years because I didn't like it when I was a kid. So I stopped at 10 years old, or maybe even 7. And then I picked up the guitar at 10. I've learned a bunch of string instruments. I play the violin, the bass, the guitar, the viola, because once you learn one, the other ones are easier to learn. And now I want to pick up the keys. So I bought this because you know what? Even with the other ones that have good MIDI, I hate having to go in and chop things up. I'd rather be able to play the thing because I know what it's like to be able to play an instrument. I know what that does to the music. I know how much better that is. So I'm going to take the time to learn. I'm going to find a teacher that can teach me in the way that I know I need to learn. And then I'll be a better producer because I'll be able to record and use my hands and play things with the human feel. Also, the dumbest thing ever, y'all are quantizing and humanizing. If you guys are that far off of the tempo, then you need to just take lessons in rhythm. You don't need to quantize and then humanize. This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. What the hell are you doing? Just get good. Go invest in your music and your career. Also, it gives you longevity, okay? If I don't get hired to be an engineer, I can get hired to play guitar. I can get hired to play bass. I could get hired to play violin. I could get hired to sing. I could get hired to write. I could get hired to engineer. I could get hired to mix. Because I love music, I've learned all these facets, and I'm going to continue to grow and become more and more valuable. You guys that are complaining about this are usually the people that are going to make every excuse in the book not to actually invest in yourself and do better at music. Because you just want ghetto tools. You want it to be easy. You don't want to have to work for it. You just want it to do the job without the skill. Y'all want to rob the bank rather than work for your money. Y'all rather it just right click C major scale there rather than take the time to learn how to play a C major scale, learn how to play a major 7 chord. You just want to right click it and it be done. Because you don't care. You don't care. And so from that perspective, from the production perspective, producer perspective, producers aren't complaining. Beat makers are, okay? Because producers, we play instruments, you know? Um, I'm gonna show you guys a YouTuber that I like. I'm gonna give him a shout out, Amir Perry. This dude is a great producer. He produces in Pro Tools, but guess what? He plays the keys. Any producer that produces in Pro Tools, okay, they're gonna play an instrument because you have to be able to play an instrument to be actually considered a producer. Okay, imagine a vocal producer that can't help you hit your harmony because they don't know how to sing. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard that you're a producer but you can't play an instrument. No, you're not. A producer, number one, if you've never been in the room while the artist is recording their vocals, you're not a producer. A producer is a musician first, and you love music. You have miking techniques that you like. You have guitar tones that you like. You have um, chord structures that you like, stuff like that. That's what a producer has. They have an ear, they're there. And the problem is also we have people like Rick Rubin and DJ Khaled calling themselves producers and making you guys really confused, okay? Because they're not producers either, they're executives, okay? They're executive producers. When you watch a film and you see executive producer, that means they paid everyone. Okay, they're the guys paying everything, or they own the room, they own the studio. So you bring artists in there, and you're the executive, so you get 50% off rip because otherwise they wouldn't have been able to record in the first place. That's how that works. They're not producers. They might have a team of producers with them, team of producers and beat makers, but they are not producers themselves. So I think that's also something that we have to clarify because it's confusing the heck out of people, and that's just false information. They're not producers; they're executives. They're executive producers, so they'll just call themselves producers, even though they're executives. Now, who can actually complain about Pro Tools? I'll tell you. It's not producers, like I said. If you're complaining about Pro Tools, you're being lazy because you don't want to learn how to be a better musician. But I'm going to take this off real quick because the people that aren't complaining, I think, should be complaining. Engineers. I know a lot of these guys would say that Pro Tools is a engineer's DAW, right? This is an engineer's DAW, according to a lot of people. But as someone who switched to Studio One as their primary DAW, if I was an engineer, I'd be so freaking pissed. Okay. Now, there's a couple of reasons why Pro Tools has a lot of hate. Number one, they're quick keys. Okay. I have an up and a down arrow, but if I want to move up and down in Pro Tools, I have to use P and semicolon. What logic does that make? Absolutely none. But that's how Pro Tools works. And if you ever played fighting games, Pro Tools is running to the same issue that fighting games had with the combos. Like, I don't know if you ever played Soul Calibur on the GameCube, but I always got frustrated because the combos would be in buttons that I don't have. I'd have to learn the code and then come over here and do it. And by the time I came back over here, I already forgot what the code was. So for my brain, when I was in engineering school, this was a problem because I automatically want to go to my arrows, but I have to go to P and semicolon. It just doesn't work for my brain. And Pro Tools hasn't had the ability to do custom quick keys until 2022, which is crazy for a DAW that prides itself in its ability of quick keys. Everybody talks about how fast are you in Pro Tools? What's your quick key speed? You know, that's what they care about. I'm just so shocked that for something that is so quick key central and everybody talks about the quick keys in Pro Tools, that number one, they've only had quick key customizations for the last 2 years, 3 because it's 2025 now, and number two, when I moved into Studio One, macros. The fact that I can't do this in Pro Tools is absolutely sad. As an engineer, you know, you've probably seen Young Guru and the way he moves. There's things that I can do here, like this, that would take me 5 moves to do in Pro Tools. 5 moves, okay? I created like 3 tracks there, but I could, in order to do that in Pro Tools, I have to copy, delete, move down, and paste it. And or you have to drag it down. macros. I don't know why for Pro Tools, something that prides itself in its quick key ability, they don't have macros. You know, I created this macro toolbar, by the way. If you're a Studio One user, comp it. It's your best friend for as a tracking engineer. I'm gonna tell you right now, it's gonna give you everything you need. But for example, fly hook, right? What does that mean? Well, sometimes an artist wants to fly hook. I just click that there and then hit fly hook and it flies it. Pro Tools Pro Tools can't do that. You have to like literally copy, move over, paste it. And I have that on a quickie. I just go boom. Just to show you, I have it there, and then I just hit my quickie, boom, it does it. So I think out of anybody who should be complaining about Pro Tools, it's not producers. Like I said, if you're a producer complaining about Pro Tools, you just need to actually care about music for once and take lessons so that you can record things in real time and not be that far off. Okay? But two, I think engineers should be complaining. How do you not have this in Pro Tools that you could just move previous or next in Pro Tools like no problem? Like I said, I'm creating tracks right now because I did that. But how can you not do this yet? How is that not an option? Heck, that right there, it's copy cut, right? So it copies it, cuts it, and then I can come over here. I can just move my arrows and then hit Command V and it pastes it at the original position. I don't really have to touch my mouse. People talk about not having to touch your mouse in Pro Tools. A lot of people, when they say that, they're touching their mouse a lot in Pro Tools. But this, y'all can't do this. None of you can. Because Pro Tools, for some reason, they've dropped the ball on things when it comes to engineering. And I get it, like they're the industry standard because they're the first people to care for studios. And so all the studios are integrated into their system, so it's going to be hard for them to leave. That's the one thing that people understand. If you're a studio, you already spent so much money on this gear, like where do you go? And also, imagine how hard it would be if every single studio is on a different DAW. Where do we go? Where do we choose? Now, if we are going to have that discussion, I'm going to tell you right now, you should all be on Studio One because they're killing Pro Tools on every aspect. But from an engineer's perspective, I have to be honest with you. Pro Tools, you're lagging behind. Okay? That movement I did here takes 5 steps in Pro Tools. Here it takes 1. Okay? And it's just there's so much that I wish Pro Tools would do that they just don't do, right? Now what's the whole point of this conversation at the end of the day, right? You're not going to change the studios until a DAW comes in with a really good offer for recording studios, then it's going to be the industry standard. But then people also argue, well, it's the industry standard for an industry that's dying. What does that mean? Well, studios are closing. True. But here's the issue, all right? How are we going to have an easy, steady flow of movement of tracks between this person? You can bounce everything out, but what if you're the mixing engineer? You don't want people committing everything because they're not all in the same DAW. So it gets a lot harder about how do we send things to each other. So with Pro Tools, as long as you have a Pro Tools thing, you just send them the session. They just open it up. Everything's fine. But if you're having to bounce out every time to just send them the files, and then, you just hope that it loads up the way it's supposed to. There's no sync issues. So if we're going to try to complain about Pro Tools, then what's the solution? How do we get away from Pro Tools? What DAW does everyone agree that we use? Because right now, if it's not Pro Tools, everybody still can't agree on what the better alternative is. People are like, oh, it's FL. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. What is it? We have to decide if we're going to say this. If it's not this one, then what is? And if you can't agree on it, well, it's funny how the one that we're all hating on is the one that everyone is else is saying, yeah, it is. So it's like, where do we go? So there you go, guys. That's basically my opinion. I think that if you're complaining from a producer's perspective, you don't care enough to learn an instrument, and you really shouldn't be in this conversation. But if you're an engineer, you should be pissed, cause the navigation things that everybody says Pro Tools is great for, I'm gonna tell you right now, Studio One puts Pro Tools to sleep. The fact that y'all don't have macros, it's shameful. Like, being able, like, guys, you realize that you can program it. If there's something that you do, like, all the time, so I know that Pro Tools has, like, oh, you can open up a certain plugin with a quickie. You could do that here too. But what you can't do in Pro Tools is tell it to go, hey, take this thing right here that I have highlighted. I want you to copy it, cut it, move it down to the next track, and paste it at its original position. That's what this is doing. Right? One's up, one's down. So I really can't say that Pro Tools is the greatest for editing anymore, because they've lagged behind a lot. Now, as far as production goes, I really can't complain. They do what it needs to be done, because pros typically, like I said, they either play instruments or bring in people that do. And to those of you who are complaining and are going to argue about, oh, no, I ain't going to learn an instrument, blah, blah, or what about drums? What if I want to put drums on my thing? I can't. Bro, if you learn an instrument, guess what? You're going to meet other musicians. It's just inevitable. You're going to surround yourself. You're going to go to music stores, play. You're going to find other people that play. If you're a musician, there's a circle of musicians. Okay? We all work together. I have a friend, like, I use Studio One because, yes, the MIDI is god-awful in Pro Tools, right? But if I want drums, because I use it for digital drums to get the concepts down, right? Whatever. Or just sometimes I just want digital drums on it. Big deal, right? But if I want drums, I just go over to his house. He's a drummer. We mic up his drum kit. I hit record, and he plays the drums for me. You know? And, musicians at the end of the day, like, they were always looking for an opportunity to perform, to play, to do anything. So, now you're like, oh, but it's expensive. But if it's like, how expensive are we talking, right? Like, to be honest, most musicians aren't going to charge you that much. Most of your musician friends aren't going to charge you that much to do this. They're really not. And whatever value it is, it's probably because they're good, right? And if you aren't willing to spend that money on a musician, then that tells you how much you care about your music. Because you guys would probably say $300 for a musician is too much, but then turn around and see some kicks for $300 and comp it no matter what, because it looks nice. Where are your priorities? You know what I'm saying? Like, if the kicks are worth $300, but the musician that's going to make your music and enhance your music and make it sound better asks for $300, you're going to say no. So what do you really care about? Shoes or your music? Once again, guys, my name is Chalita Suave. Welcome to Suave City. This is for all things rock and R&B. If you want to learn about the number system, about how to put chords together and become an actual producer and become a better musician, music maker, then this is the channel for you. And if you just want to have ghetto tools, and fine, have ghetto tools and limit yourself and your ability. But in my opinion, Pro Tools is still the industry standard. And if you're complaining about it, typically it's because you want ghetto tools and you don't want to learn how to play an instrument. You don't want to get better at your craft. So